Guys, how we doing? Welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone's all right. Big shout out to all the subscribers as always, and welcome along anyone new. Gratitude to all. So Tszyu has joined forces with Pedro Diaz. This is a few weeks ago now, so I just haven't got around to making the video, but I found it an interesting matchup actually, because I actually know quite a little bit about Pedro Diaz from his days with Miguel Cotto when I was really following his career here in New York, and I sort of understood what Pedro Diaz was doing and how he got that massive win, which that was a fight I was at actually, Cotto Margarito 2.
Cotto's clearly trying to box in a little bit of a circle. Margarito has trouble with moving targets.
Brought in Pedro Diaz, and I'm going to talk about the science that you know, Cuban coaches do bring because of the influence. Oh, sorry, my camera keeps dropping. You know, there's a heavy influence between the Cuban school and the Soviet school, right? I don't exactly know where or why. It's definitely to do with the communism regime or something like that. But there were coaches from the USSR that were going over to Cuba. I will leave a name up on the screen. I forgot his name, but he was a big part of it. And you know, the influence is there with the style as well. Sorry, this is going to keep dropping for some reason. So the style is there, right? You can see that they're very, you know, back foot heavy. They like to box. They like to use their skills. They like to use the ring footwork as well, right? I think the Cubans are probably a bit more athletic and, you know, maybe a bit more flashy and stuff like that. But they do have, you know, very similar approach to boxing, which is boxing, real pure boxing. The Russians and you know, the Eastern Europeans, they're definitely probably the highest, most disciplined fighters, and that's a big part of the Soviet style, is discipline. And you know, you could say probably the Cubans aren't as disciplined, but then I don't think anybody is as disciplined as the Russians, to be honest. But you know, a big part of the Soviet style are all those things, you know. So and the main thing to take from this is the level of science that they bring into their training is absolutely unbelievable. So yeah, it's I think it's actually a fantastic pairing, to be honest with you, because you know, Pedro Diaz from Cuba, and actually while I talk about Cuba, I'm going to bring in some music because this is a music channel now as well. It's always been trying to go that direction because I love music and I love boxing, and I'm trying to fuse the two. So I'm going to play a little beat that I made in the background. I've been trying to play this Montuno, which is a Cuban piano riff, I guess, you know. It's like, you know, that Latin, Cuban, Puerto Rican, just that Latin style piano, which is really Cuban. Alright guys, just going to jump in really quickly because I shot the video about 5 or 6 days now, and I've just been editing it, and I wanted to interject the music part, which has been a bit more difficult. So this Cuban piano part here, I'm just going to add that with some percussion, and the percussion is actually not from me because it's very difficult to do any type of Latin percussion. It's very rhythmical and a lot of soul bass. You know, you really got to practice a long time, and it's not something I could really do, at least not now. But maybe in the future, maybe I'll add a few horns and stuff like that. But I also watched a video just this morning, actually. It's still quite early in the morning now, but Tszyu talking about working with Pedro Diaz, so I'll include that in throughout this video. But hopefully, you know, I wanted to bring some music in, Cuban music. Pedro Diaz is Cuban, but you know, it's not really my music, to be honest with you. So I did my best. I've also, at the end of this, I'll leave a documentary I made on the Uzbek style of boxing, which also compares, there's a little section in there that compares it to Cuban and Russian. You know, goes into like some of the rhythm and the history and stuff like that. I'll leave it at the end of this if you want to check that out. I made it quite a while ago now. But anyway, thanks for watching as always. Let's back to the video.
He's a real loyal, passionate, family type man, and that's exactly what I am as well. So we clicked straight away, and I'm glad where we're at now. No, I just feel comfortable here, and I'll see where things are at in the next couple of months. Grew up watching Miguel Cotto. He was one of my favorite fighters back in the days, you know. So I saw the changes that he made, and Yeah, it's crazy the names that he's worked with. I think it was like 20 or so world champions. I don't know how many Olympic gold medals. I forgot the exact number, but something crazy, man. And he's been there, done that with everyone in the sport, and he's still got this burning desire, and the fact that he's taken me on and welcomed me a part of his family, you know. Basically, that's how it's happened, and it's just a good feeling to have that. We do a lot of training, man, I'll be honest with you, but everything's very strategic. He's got this handbook, and he reads and he plans it all out, and everything's structured. It's crazy, man. Honestly, this guy is a genius. His energy levels are insane. The bloke doesn't sleep. And it's very... What was the question again? Sorry.
Because music, boxing, and art is a big part of this channel, but obviously I'm sure you guys are here for the boxing part, so we'll talk about what can it do for Tszyu. Basically, at least just in my opinion, of course, look, obviously he needs to think a lot more in the ring. You know, he sort of went away from that, whether it was just his style was just suited for, you know, the I say B level, because he did have a couple of good wins against top 10 guys, Tony Harrison being one of them. You know, Brian Mendoza was a decent win. I wouldn't call the Joey Spencer a decent win, but I'm sure I'm forgetting one other fighter that he went on a little bit of a run. He took care of what he took care of with the style that he did, and it was good and it worked. But you know, I think his ego got the better of him against Backram. His lack of preparation from him and his team, not knowing what to do, not knowing, you know, Backram's flaws. Which, to be honest with you, I picked out one of them, which was a big one, where I was like, when he does that, you cannot go in on him because he's looking to hook you, and it's exactly what happened.
In the second round, BC.
It's no pressure, but he's not.
Oh, he got dropped with that left hook.
And you know, questions about Tszyu's chin now. I think obviously he got buzzed against, well, buzzed like, oh, he got dropped actually against Fundora.
Until it was mercifully stopped. That was October 2024, and there is the dark memory.
Because he wasn't thinking about his defense, which is where Pedro Diaz comes in, because he'll make you think about defense before you've probably punched. You know, very, very strategic, very scientific, and very I was gonna say accoladed. I don't think that's the word. Experienced, but has a lot of accolades.
12 years in national team, you know, in Cuba national team.
Olympic champion?
3-time Olympic champion and 6-time world champion and 3-time Pan American champion, you know.
You know, just the amateurs as well, you know, so he understands the art of boxing, right? Boxing's an art. Yes, it's a sweet science, but the art of boxing is to, you know, hit and not get hit. That is the purest form of it. And Tszyu just tries to hit whilst getting hit. And, you know, it's weird because he was actually quite patient before the Fundora first fight, and that was, you know, that 2 rounds there were still an excellent version of him, really. And then it's, you know, the damage that he's taken from his team's incompetence, let's be honest, and, you know, continuous, you know, and I made a video about it, and I was like, you know, I was always favor the coaches sometimes, because, you know, they can do all the hard work and they can have a bad night, and then everyone's like, get rid of the coach. You know, they were the ones that got him there, but there was definitely some massive incompetence with the corner work from the cut to you know, the keeping him in there and all that stuff. You know, it's like hindsight is 2020, but you know, that amount of damage and that amount of blood and that amount of you know, negligence to let a fighter just go out like that, it was obviously proven to be a little bit detrimental. And then you add the background situation, you got a fighter he needs saving from himself. That spirit, which is ironic because he did quit in his last fight, which I'll talk about in a minute, but it's you know, he does need he needs more guidance.
Good team, good fighter, good coach, and working for the tactic. Tactic is the best now. You need good discipline, we make the champion.
And his team weren't giving it to him. They didn't have, and part of this was, this is just my opinion, you know, I'm not saying it's true, but his ego got the better of him in that background fight. You know, he felt amazing. He kind of wanted to, you know, wrong the right of the quote unquote loss against the Fundora the first fight. Obviously, there was a major blemish there, but he did still lose the fight. It looked like he was on his way to getting a stoppage, but you know, so he wanted to come back with a vengeance. And even when he was training for the Ortiz fight, when that fight got like announced or it had, I don't know if it got signed, but it was, you know, that was in. And then he was training, and then his doctor was like, look, you need to take it easy. So he's out there training with all, after the Fundora thing. That can't have been good. Maybe he was sparring, stuff like that. All this stuff that's been, you know, going through. And just, I think now he's got a little bit of damage from that period, you know. I hope he doesn't, but I can only look at it and think he can't carry on fighting like that. So in comes Pedro Diaz, which will make him think a lot more, make him understand that there's punches coming at you. You can't just walk in. I think when he fought Fundora again, he just walked in and wasn't even thinking about what was coming back to him. Got whacked, got hurt, got dropped, and then, you know, it really was, Fundora really leveled up in that fight as well, but there weren't any tactics, you know. There was just like the same old stuff. I know it's not easy against Fundora, but it just didn't seem like they had a game plan other than we're going to back him up and take him out, which, you know, I said at the time, you got to back Fundora up, but Fundora changed it up on him, and he was really using his length, and, you know, he looked sharp.
That's what you do against a top fighter. You aim for the chest, straight shots, but you've got to cover yourself defensively because Fundora is seeing the spots and he's getting to those.
And he looked really hard. He looked very hard to beat. That's a tough fight, Fundora. It really is. But look, I think it's an excellent matchup, to be honest with you, because Pedro Diaz, as I said, very scientific, believes in skill, doesn't really care about power, right? And there's a channel or a video that I just watched just to kind of freshen my mind on some stuff, and you know, it was quite a candid interview.
Power, no power. For me, focus and exercise, objective, skill, you know, movement. Power for me, no. But many fighters have a good power, you know.
I'll leave the link in the description, but he was just driving, and he was like, and that right there, power. You know, you could also use a word of like, you know, machismo, or you know, that soul taker. He's got to change his name, I think. Don't try to beat your opponent, right? You don't have to take their soul. You don't have to knock them out. This is just my philosophy now, my thought process, because a pressure fighter needs a good chin, usually, right? And I think, you know, it's just, he's got to add a few wrinkles. He's got to get his fundamentals up, Tszyu does, really, to be honest. Footwork, good jab, keep your hands up, be defensively responsible, which ironically he actually was before he started really stepping up to the bigger, better fighters, really. You know, defense was actually quite good. I still stand on that. When he wants to, when he's thinking about it and he's not letting his ego take over, because you need an ego in boxing. You need a big ego, but you got to control it. And I think it got out of control, if I'm honest, and it really was detrimental. And his coaching team made it, exacerbated it. Exacerbate, I don't know, you know the word I mean, exacerbate, something like that. And that, their negligence, their lack of preparation, as I said, really contributed to him not really getting the protection he needed. And here we are. And, you know, you got to admire his spirit, as always, back in the gym straight away, wants to wrong the right. And yeah, this is one of the reasons I've covered him so much, because he's got an unbelievable heart. But he needs that protecting from himself. And to do that, you need a good, solid boxing coach that can teach him the fundamentals and teach him defense whilst being offensive, if you're going to be, because he's going to be offensive minded. He's not going to suddenly be on the back foot, because you still do have to play into your strengths, which he's a pressure fighter, but he's got to be a lot smarter, and maybe even not be a full-on pressure fighter. You know, just learn how to box a little bit, learn how to slow the fight down if you need to. That's where your fundamentals come in. If things get a little, you know, a little sketchy in there, you've got to know how to slow the fight down. You do that with your footwork and your jab and keeping your hands up. You know, so Pedro Diaz would definitely teach him that. I just wonder how much is left from him, you know, neurologically, I mean. And I'm not saying it's getting completely diminished, but like, I think his health bar, if you start on 100%, every boxer is going to go down, right? It's no question about that. and the defensive ones and the slick ones and the ones that don't get hit as much, you know, their bar is going to be intact. But his bar is taking a massive hit. It might be on, you know, somewhere between 70 and 80%. I'm just throwing a random number out there. It could be more, it could be less, but ultimately it's not going to go up. So he's got to protect this from doing this and head movements and, you know, jabbing, moving, pivoting, like using his footwork, using his angles, using like just the defense drilled into his head, where he's not just going to be like, I'm going to walk this guy down. I'm old school throwback. I'm going to beat this guy up. You have to reinvent yourself now. You know, that's going to be there. You're the tough guy. You are tough, but that shouldn't come out unless it's absolutely needed. Try and start with your boxing at first, because he's got a lot of improvements to do in his boxing. His jab is all right, you know, doesn't really use it educationally, you know, from an educated standpoint. It's like it could be a lot better, I think. These are my opinions. I'm just rambling a little bit because I'd love to see him come back and do well because of his spirit. You know, I always follow fighters with spirit. David Benavidez being one of them, Subriel Matias being another. Bud Crawford, Alexander Usyk, you know, the list goes on, but like, you know, I'm very drawn. Jaya Pattaya, of course, my gosh, he's got the fearsome spirit. In fact, he might actually have a same issue with Tszyu in the sense that he's got to protect him from himself, because when he does go up to heavyweight, you can't just go in guns blazing all the time. I don't think so. I think, you know, his greatest asset could be his biggest weakness, and I think that was maybe what happened to Tszyu. His greatest asset was his biggest weakness, he was too machismo, and it got him hurt. And boxing's an unforgiving sport, it really is. But with science and art, you know, the Cuban artistry and the science combined, and also one thing to really top this whole thing off before I leave is Tszyu's Russian. So you get the combination which has worked, because if you look at the Cuban style and the Soviet style, very similar, especially where the way they check hook, the way they use the ring, the way they box, and the you know, the maneuvers that they make, and the mental discipline that they have. I think it's a good match, and he's already halfway there being Russian. But he's got a lot of work to do, I'll be honest. He's got a lot of work to do. It'll be interesting to see how he can come back, because that division is an absolute minefield. But yeah, ultimately, you know, I just went on a bit of a ramble, and you know, let me know your thoughts if you have any. I wish I'd done a bit more research on the Soviet and Cuba style, you know, a bit more knowledge on that. But ultimately, I think Pedro Diaz is a good choice. It really is, because it's going to keep him safer, and it's going to help him understand the fundamentals and really drill those in, and hopefully implement them like he did in the Cotto fight, because Cotto 1 to Cotto 2, big difference, because he was disciplined with his greed. Don't get too greedy. Don't worry about power. Don't worry about really hurting your opponent. Worry about outpointing them, outthinking them, outmaneuvering them. But anyway, a bit of a long one today. I tried to you know, maybe just ramble on the back end of a video without, you know, hammering the editing, because the editing takes quite some time. I'm trying to put more content out, but a bit less editing on the back end. So, you know, hopefully it makes sense. But yeah, thank you again, as always. Hope everyone's well. Smash the like button if you enjoyed it. Peace. I'm out.
The main skill that stands out to me with Uzbek boxing is their footwork. It's exceptional. It's fast, explosive, and highly coordinated. The training methods of fast, complex plyometrics only reinforces and ingrains the ability to transfer the skills to real fighting.
Adrimov is a bulldozer. Watch his left hand. He fights orthodox but switches to southpaw.
He's not thinking, he's just punching off of instinct. Any angle, it's the angles that make him dangerous. Awkward styles and angles. Awkward styles and angles.
In addition to their superb footwork, they are very aggressive. They love going downstairs to the body.
Another body shot, and Sierra crumples to the canvas.
They're very tenacious. They love lining up that backhand with power shots
There's another knockdown in round 1.
They like using that pendulum step. They have a high work rate. They fight with passion. They have finesse, fluidity, arrogance, camaraderie. They train hard, they're disciplined, and they love what they do. And they have a whole country behind them. Let's not forget the American influence, adding several strings to their already pristine bow, fine-tuning and polishing the style in preparation, ready for the big stage.
There's a good right hand, left hand. The thing about Uzbekistan fighters, they love Mexican style. They like coming forward and putting that pressure. Going to the body. I have to remind Medrimov to box and use his skill.
The style to me is a less patient, more aggressive, less counterpunching system than the Cuban boxing. Arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest style in the history of the sport of boxing. They both have phenomenal footwork. They both fight with a beautiful rhythm. They get their rhythm from some of the dancing from their country, their culture. Love that backhand uppercut, the slip underneath with the southpaw uppercut, or orthodox. You know, they churn out southpaws intentionally. That is not a coincidence that you get so many southpaws in each country. Just look at the gyms. They throw an identical check hook, which is the Euro check hook, which is a step off to the side, as opposed to a pivot on the front foot. Let's not forget they both come from communist regimes, which can only instill an almighty will in the people of that country. So their skills are pushed to the absolute limit with diligent training exercises that they carry over into the fight. They have a tremendous amount of agility. They have self-belief. They have a whole country behind them, and they have the world at their feet. We are about to find out just how far these brave young men will go. So I ask the question once more, who will it be? Who will follow in the footsteps of greatness and cement their name and their legacy and their heritage and their rite of passage in Uzbekistan boxing forever, forever.
Boxing.
On it is.